And so when we got down there, you go down and there's actually like a barbershop pole sticking out of the ground with this round globe on it.
No way.
And like, yeah, it is. It's insane. Like you see this thing. I mean, that's a bucket list thing to see that. I mean, tell you what. And you see this thing and you're like, oh, we're like so stoked and excited. So we started running around it, thinking we're like circumnavigating the world. And we're like, woohoo, you know, that's faster than all you round the world sailors. Cheap thrills.
Wow. And I didn't know that. I didn't realize that was I mean, I've seen that depicted in movies, that barbershop pole. That's
wow. It's real. Yeah.
Yeah, that's real. So you hit that, and now it's like, all right, let me take a poo, and now we have to make our way back.
Well, you can't actually poo down there, down the South Pole. The reason for that is that all the poo in the sort of like last degree, so the 112 kilometers, which is, you know, the last 80 odd miles, 70 odd miles, you've got to collect all your poo. And then you got to take it back out with you, and then you can drop it sort of outside that radius around the South Pole. But so we hit the South Pole. You know, we took some photos. You did some obligatory sort of sponsor things that we had to do down there. And since we were trying to do the unsupported return journey, there's a South Pole station there. We couldn't afford to go into that place because that would potentially negate our unsupported portion of our trip.
Right.
So we stayed there for about an hour and a half, you know, did what we had to do, and then turned around and started skiing back. And that was where the trip really got hard, because we'd taken 62 days to get to the South Pole. We had some pretty horrible conditions. We had, you know, a foot and a half of snowfall in the first week. We had 2 weeks straight of whiteouts. We went really slow. And so it meant we only had 27 days to ski the return journey. And that meant we had to basically ski a marathon each and every day.
Yeah, and when I was reading about this, I read that, you know, you were dealing with starvation and dehydration and even sleep depravity. Can you explain some of the actual situations you were in where you dealt with some of these?
Yeah. So at day 37 of that trip, we realized we were going too slow, and so we needed to ration. And so what we decided to do is every second day basically was going to be a half ration day. So your body's burning 10,000 calories and you're only consuming maximum 3,000 calories. Now that's not a very good situation to be in. And so the weight really started stripping off us, like falling off us. Over the course of the whole journey, I lost 30 kilos, which is 66 pounds of weight over that trip. And my body started to break down on that return. So I'd go to the bathroom, I'd be passing blood, you know, the hunger you'd feel when these cramps you'd get, and the hunger you feel is just something that I never want to feel again. I've never been that hungry in my life. I remember eating all the toothpaste I had one night because there was just something else to eat.
Wow.
And yeah, it got dark. It really did. We had issues with our fingers because circulation, you know, basically our nerves had died in the lower 2/3 of our fingers. We didn't get frostbite. We got frost nip. That's where the nerves die, but the flesh doesn't die. Had this infection across our faces, which meant you'd take a mouthful of food and your lips would crack and bleed, and you could just taste blood for the rest of the meal. We'd also have this, well, I in particular have this issue with my toes where I got this really, really bad fungal infection. And it meant that I had to lance my toes every 2 or 3 days just to depuss them and get to be able to fit them inside the boots. So the back end of the trip wasn't pretty. And I've never pushed myself that hard on a journey. It just was, tear you apart.
And were you in communication with a home base like you were with the kayaking trip?
Yeah, so on a trip like that, we talked to our support team based in Sydney. What we've always worked out is you have one key point, one key contact, and that's a little handy hint. Like, don't try and manage a multitude of people. Just have one person who manages all those other people for you. So that logistical manager. But also down in Antarctica, we had to make one other phone call every day, and that was to the base down in Antarctica that was responsible for us, so they could keep, updated about our position and make calls on how we were doing. And so it was quite funny because of all our weight loss over the course of the trip. It was Cass and Jonesy. I'm Justin Jones, and Cass is James Castrician. That we called Cass and Jonesy. They changed our moniker and nickname to Skin and Bonesy because we basically lost so much weight. But yeah.
And I mean, so now you're stuck out in the Arctic, and you're bleeding from your lips, you're passing blood, your body's deteriorating, you're releasing pus from your toes. And even at this point, you still did not just reach out to either contact and call the trip. What was it that, how did you know you were going to be capable enough to finish the trip? And if these things weren't a big enough red flag, like, hey, I should take a break, do you know what would have eventually been the breaking point for you where you had to call it? Would you had to have been completely incapacitated?
Yeah, look, I mean, these journeys, you're not going to let them go lightly. If you've worked for, the Tasman 3.5 years to lead up to a journey like this, or Antarctica, 2.5 years of preparation and planning to lead up to that journey, you're not going to let it die quietly. You're not just going to go, you know what, I'm not feeling good today, I'll press the button, we'll get out of here. Because you've invested so much into it. You've invested a huge amount of time. You've invested, the pain and frustration of your friends, your family, their commitment to the journey. You've raised a ton as well. Like, these trips, they're not cheap. We raised, $300,000 to $400,000 to do these expeditions each one. And so when it comes to suffering on the trail, yeah, there were days, and I'll be honest, there were days where I was broken down in Antarctica and I wanted to curl up into a ball and just cry. And that was it, and it was hard work for me to get back on the trail and start skiing. But in reality, I chose to be there. So, I mean, what right did I have to complain about a path that I chose to do? Yeah, sure, at times things weren't going well, but I chose to put myself there. And one thing that we used, it was a bit of what I used in particular, it's a bit of a tool, it's the power of perspective. So we had inside the tent little notes written all over the inside of our tent. Some of them from friends, from family, wishing us well and just writing, motivational things for us. But in pride of place on either side of the tent were two notes written by kids that were going through chemotherapy. We were using that journey to raise money and awareness for a youth cancer charity. And you'd be feeling so upset, so shitty at yourself, and, wanting to pack the trip in. And you turn and look at the tent on the side and see this note from a little kid who's going through that cancer battle. And they're going through that battle with so much more grace and decorum than you are at that moment. And they didn't choose to be there. What right did you have to actually complain when you chose to be put there? And so that was a really powerful thing for me to kind of go, oh, you know what? I've just got to pick myself back up. Just got to get back on the trail.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. And and now you finally make it, and that had to be an incredible feeling to finally get back. And what was the first thing you did once you returned to civilization?
I've got to talk about the end of the trip first, though,
Sure.
if you don't mind. There was a huge twist to that Antarctic expedition, and the twist was that when we turned up to the start line to do this journey, when we were in Punta Arenas in Chile, about to fly down to Antarctica, another person emerged from the woodwork. A guy by the name of Alexander Gammy, who is a Norwegian polar guide. And he told us that he's going to do the exact same expedition as us. He was going to be the first person to ski from the edge of Antarctica to the South Pole and back. And, what we did is we set, it was going to be the longest unsupported, unassisted polar expedition of all time. And so we're like, right, shit, okay, we're in a race with this bloke. And so we started going out there with this mentality. We had to beat this guy across. And when we were coming into the South Pole, we found out that he was actually 5 days ahead of us. So we're like, all right, we're going to try and catch him, but he's ahead. And we realized when we got to the finish line that he'd beaten us. And so there was a bit of a bittersweet feeling to this whole journey. And I'll never forget skiing down the final slope towards our finish line, this imaginary line, which was the end of our journey. And there was this little rock on the horizon, and that's what we're going to aim for. Is we're skiing down this slope, and we were skiing, would fall over, would pick ourselves back up, keep skiing, just always focus on this rock, until finally, when we got down to the bottom of that slope and we looked up, we realized it was actually not a rock at all. It was a 6'3" tall blonde Norwegian bloke who was waiting 3 kilometers short of that finish line. He was waiting 2 miles before the end of the journey so that we could finish this trip together.
Wow.
I mean, insane. Like, he was under so much pressure from the authorities, from, people to get out of there. And he was like, no, I'm waiting for these two blokes. I'm going to wait for these guys because they went through this journey with me. And, if there wasn't for them sort of pushing me along just by being down here in these situations, I never would have finished this journey. You know, the three of us, Cass, Alex, and myself, we all believe if only one team had gone down that year, it wouldn't have made it. So pretty phenomenal. Like that finish, seeing him there and being able to sort of share that end with him, it's like, it's going to have such an indelible, permanent mark in my mind about what sportsmanship, or what kindness, or what humility, or what humanity actually is about. And it's not about winning. It's not. It's about, you know, rather than you stand on the peak of a mountain all by yourself, it's about how you can drag a group of people along with you. How can you share those experiences? How can you collaborate with people? And so that is one of the big key things that I've taken from that expedition. It's forever changed my perspective on life.
Wow, man. That is incredible. Did you have much communication with him before the trip started? Or was this really one of the first times you guys talked?
The first time we found out about it was literally in South America. And so we were like dumbfounded. And like, I'm going to be honest, I wanted to hate the guy. I really did. Like, it's just like, this guy's coming along to steal our, our glory and all this rah. And so we were upset by it. And he's a hard guy to hate though. So over the course of the whole expedition, we'd talk on the satellite phone maybe every 2 weeks. And he was so open with information. He's like, guys, if you're suffering from this problem on the trail, like what you're telling me, like this is what we do back in Norway. This is what I would do if I was you. He was sharing information with his competitor. And so like that, I mean, that's just such an amazing spirit. And like this friendship, this bond grew. And like we had a really bad season in terms of the weather down there. And like we both went through and we both weathered that. And he's the only other guy that I feel that connection with other than Cass. So, we've really made a friend for life there. I mean, I absolutely love the bloke, full stop. Yeah, without a
doubt. That's incredible. I mean, it would have been hard to compete with a guy who grew up in Norway, growing up in Bali.
Yeah. Yeah, he's one, he can ski properly. Like it's quite fun.
Right.
I did a presentation in Norway a few years back, and I'll never forget, showing a video of us finishing this journey off, skiing to the finish line, and some guy yells out in the crowd, "Oh, they still can't ski," and that's kind of the truth.
Well, I guess that's the beauty of it all, is that it doesn't matter that you can't ski; you still did it.
Yeah. No, I mean, we can ski. It's just not going to be pretty,
It's not a Norwegian technique.
The glide. Oh, man, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Can I ask what is wrong with Cass to do these trips with you?
Or is it you?
I don't know. Like, it's. I think it's both of us. I mean, there's some sort of strange thing. I don't know what it is. It's hard to nail it down. Like, if you find that person, and that's something about these journeys and trips, it's so powerful when you find a person that's willing to do the kind of same stuff as you. And I will admit, like, Cass is probably the bloke that's probably come up with some of these harebrained ideas. And I'm the one that's stupid enough to say, you know what, that sounds like a good idea because it beats working for a living, And so it's so powerful when you do find another person though, because when you get those big hits, when you get sponsorships that fall through, or just a kayak that flops over on its side in the water, without that supportive network, without another person going through it, it can cripple you. I know a lot of people that have tried to do trips and have failed in the lead up because they have had some severe hits that they haven't been able to recover from. When there's a team of you, it's a lot easier to share that pain amongst each other.